What's going on, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here to examine an issue of the X-Men. Today, I am here to examine X-Men issue 52. We have two stories in this issue. The first story is written by Arnold Drake with penciling by Don Heck and Werner Roth with inking by John Tartaglione and lettering by Sam Rosen. The backup story is the origins of the Beast and how he came to join the X-Men, and that is written by Arnold Drake with penciling by Werner Roth, inking by John Vierporten, and lettering by, I assume, Sam Rosen. Sam Rosen did have a brother who was also a letterer, and this credits section only credits everyone by their last names, but since Sam Rosen was working on the other part of this issue, I'm assuming that he is the letterer here. And this issue is a little bit of a letdown for a couple of reasons. Number one, we do not have Jim Steranko on pencils anymore, and I talked about how much I love Jim Steranko's pencils, how much of a breath of fresh air it brought into the book, and I don't mean that as a diss on anyone who worked on this book before or after his brief two-issue run on the series. I think that pretty much all of the artists on the series have been bringing their A-game. Some of them I like more than others, but I don't think we've had a bad artist yet. But Jim Steranko really took things to the next level. I really liked what he was doing, and I knew he wasn't going to be on the book for long. I thought he was going to be on it for longer than 2 issues. So I was a little disappointed to see Don Heck's pencils, and again, nothing against him. I think he's doing a fine job, but I don't think it holds a candle up to what Jim Steranko was doing. And so if you remember a couple issues ago, I went to the caveman, the person chained up in a cave watching shadow puppets on the wall, and then he's released and he sees what was making those shadow puppets. Now I feel like I'm shackled once again, and I'm looking at art that's pretty good, but not near as good as what Jim Steranko is doing. So maybe with Jim Steranko kind of showing this comic what it could do, and kind of showing the industry what you can do with these comic books, maybe we will get to see other artists kind of look at that and say, okay, I can do something different. I don't have to model my style and my penciling style after comic books from the 1950s, because you look at this issue and then you look at like the first issue of the X-Men, and the first issue of the X-Men in comparison, it feels very stilted. It doesn't seem very excited. Things seem very mundane almost. And then you look at this, and the panels aren't all the same size. There's different sizes and shapes. Even the panel sizes, or the shapes, they don't all have to be rectangular. They can be kind of coming at an angle, and word balloons can kind of be offset. They're not confined within the panel. Just different stuff like that can make the comic book seem more alive. And so we're seeing a little bit of that here. So even though Jim Steranko's not doing penciling, I feel like we're going to see a little bit of his influence kind of leave a legacy on this series. Maybe that's all in my head. Maybe that would have started happening anyway if Steranko hadn't worked on the book, or maybe not. I'm not really sure. But this issue does bring to a close the Magneto, Mesmero, Polaris storyline. And once again, I don't think they ever call Lorna Dane Polaris, but I'm calling her that just for simplicity's sake. But this issue, quite a bit happens. We find out pretty early on that Eric the Red, who we saw at the end of the previous issue, he had like earthquake powers and was making fire come out of his hands. He comes to Mesmero's mutant city, and Magneto, I don't think I mentioned this in my video on the previous issue, he was actually injured when some debris fell when the X-Men were escaping in the previous issue, and so he was temporarily crippled, I think, or he said he was paralyzed from the waist down, something like that. Kind of a weird little parallel to Professor X, and they don't really play with that because we only see him like twice in this issue, and we only see him from like the chest up, so that's disappointing. It would have been nice to see him in a wheelchair to kind of a callback to Professor X, but anyway, Eric the Red comes, he gets in a little bit of a fight with Mesmero and his goons, and then Polaris, she is internally struggling with what to do. Magneto is her father, so she feels like she has to work with him even though she knows he's evil, and I talked about this a little bit before. I don't like this. I feel like the series could have just had Polaris say, I don't care if you're my biological father, what you're doing is wrong, I'm going to fight you on this. And I think if this comic had come out a good 10 or 15 years later, we probably would have had that. You can do a story where biological relatives aren't necessarily the be-all, end-all of the choices you make. If your biological dad is evil, you can stand up to that and you can say, it doesn't matter that you fathered me, this other guy raised me. And they don't even mention the name of the people who raised her, but at the end of this issue, we find out Iceman, he stormed off angry in the previous issue. He went to Polaris' hometown, which I don't know how he knew knew where she lived. I don't think she ever told him, by the way, I grew up in this one small town in Illinois or whatever. But anyway, he went and he interviewed the people who raised her, the people that she thought were her parents, and he finds out that they are actually her aunt and uncle. Her real parents died, or her biological parents, I should say, died in a plane crash, and Magneto is not her real biological father. And I don't really know how Iceman found that out. This whole thing has been weird. Basically, Magneto shows up and tells Polaris, I'm your dad. And she says, okay, I guess I'll join you. He doesn't have any proof. He just says that he's her father, and she believes him. And then Iceman comes in this issue and says he's lying, and she says, oh, okay, I guess I'll believe you. Again, Iceman doesn't have any proof. He says that he has affidavits to prove what he's saying, but he never shows those to her. She just believes him, and then she rebels against Magneto. This was all just very poorly handled, and I have never been a fan of Polaris being Magneto's daughter, especially if Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch are also his kids, and I know with the current retcon right now, they aren't. Now, in another 10 or 15 years, maybe they will be again. That's a weird thing when you go and look at the history of these characters. From the beginning, Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were not intended to be Magneto's children. That was revealed to be the case in like the early 80s, I think. It was in the 12-issue Scarlet Witch and the Vision maxi series, I believe, that Magneto first revealed that he was their father. It was right around the time when Scarlet Witch gave birth to her twins that we found that out. And so a lot of people liked that retcon, and a lot of people got really upset in, I believe, Rick Remender's Uncanny Avengers. No, it was Axis, I think, where we found out that Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were not Magneto's kids. A lot of people hated that. I wasn't crazy about it. I didn't like the reason behind it, but a lot of people said, oh, this is how it's always supposed to have been. You can't change that. Well, it was a retcon. They're retconning away a retcon. So that kind of thing happens. I don't like it, but I get used to it. I don't like that Polaris is the daughter of Magneto, though, because in this issue we're being told, no, she's not. And then years later they said, oh wait, yes he is. I don't like retcons that go back and retcon away retcons just to make things more confusing. I feel like Polaris was an okay character without Magneto being her father. I personally prefer Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch being his kids and Polaris just being an unrelated mutant. I think you can have mutants who have similar abilities and they don't have to be related to each other. You look at Jean Grey and Professor X. Jean Grey now has telepathy, and this series is playing it like Professor X gave her telepathy, but many years later we will find out that she had telepathy when she was a little kid, and then Professor X basically blocked that from her mind so that she wouldn't go crazy. But I don't think that Professor X and Jean Grey have to be related, so I don't think on the same token that Polaris has to be related to Magneto. So starting now for like 15 years or more, Polaris officially is not the daughter of Magneto. Around the time when I first started reading X-Men comics, which would have been early 2000s, I think she was technically not the daughter of Magneto, but I think everyone was kind of getting ready to make her the daughter of Magneto once again. I have one of those books. I don't have it here with me, but it was the Ultimate Guide to the X-Men. I got one of those when I first started reading the X-Men books, and according to that book, it said when it came out that Polaris is not the daughter of Magneto, but that was published maybe in like 2000. It was sometime after the first X-Men movie came out, and then just a year or two later, the comics were basically saying, yeah, she's kind of his daughter again. So that's a thing that they always are going back and forth on. As of this issue, though, she is not his daughter, but then you have Eric the Red, who we find out is Cyclops. Eric the Red, I don't like this. This is stupid for a couple reasons. Number one, where did Cyclops get this costume that can create earthquakes and shoot energy beams out of its fingers? We are never told where he gets that costume, and wherever he got it, why aren't the X-Men using this thing against the bad guys that they are fighting all the time? Cyclops has optic blasts. They're pretty powerful, but occasionally his optic blast will run out. We have seen before where he will keep using his powers and then he'll pass out because he's been using his powers too much. Okay, you've got this exosuit thing. Why don't you wear that into battle? Use your optic blast, and then when you start to feel a little lightheaded, use these energy beams from the fingers of these gloves of Eric the Red. This was stupid. I feel like, and I don't know for sure, but I feel like behind the scenes, somebody said, no, we're not going to keep this story going on any longer. I don't know if Arnold Drake just got tired of doing the story, so he wanted to wrap everything up. Okay, Iceman comes in and tells Polaris that she's not Magneto's daughter. Okay, Eric the Red is Cyclops in disguise. That was his plan all along. I don't know if he just got tired of it and wanted to wrap this up real quick, or if Stan Lee came and said, hey, come on, you just introduced a new character in the previous issue, don't do that, let's wrap this up, this thing's going on a little too long. I don't think that's the explanation, because the Factor 3 storyline went on for like 15 issues stretched out, so I highly doubt that editorial went to Arnold Drake and said, let's wrap this up. But this does feel like a very rushed finale. When you're reading the previous issue, it did not feel like everything was going to get wrapped up so quickly in this issue. But that's about it. Magneto escapes, and I'll go ahead and tell you this. I thought this was going to be revealed in this issue, but many issues later, it's in the very early part of Chris Claremont's X-Men, we find out that Magneto here was actually a robot. And I was thinking that was going to be revealed here. I was thinking that Mesmero had actually created this robot basically to trick all of his followers into following him when actually they thought they were following Magneto. And that would have been a pretty cool reveal. Now, saying that a character is a robot, that is kind of a sloppy retcon again. That clearly was not meant to be the case here. Magneto says, I'll get you guys next time. I have no idea how he escaped when he was crippled and he wasn't able to do anything in this entire issue, and then suddenly he's able to plant bombs in his headquarters and escape. And I have no idea what happens to this robot. I have no idea what the real Magneto was up to this whole time. Those are questions that I don't think will ever get answered. And I don't think that Magneto shows up again before Giant Size X-Men issue 1, at least not in the X-Men comic. He does show up again, I think, in the Avengers, in some issues that I do not have access to and I will not be doing videos on because I don't have those issues. But this is... I liked the beginning of this storyline a lot. I thought it was really exciting, really energetic. I was excited to see what this series was doing, introducing the latent mutants, introducing Mesmero, and this big mutant city. I thought all of that was really cool. I did not care for the introduction of Magneto here. I did not like Polaris thinking that she had to work with Magneto even though she disagreed with what he was doing. I feel like she could have had a backbone and actually stood up to him. And I did not like that Eric the Red turns out to be Cyclops. Where did he get this stupid looking costume that has all these interesting powers in it? They just had to have one line of dialogue. Beast could say, I invented that costume sometime back because we keep going underground to fight people like Grotesque and Tyrannus, so I figured this thing would be handy. Something stupid like that would have been fine. So this storyline started off really great, I think, and got not as good. Having said that, if you compare this to everything else that came before, I still think this is one of the better stories that we have talked about thus far. So that's it for the main part of this issue. Then in the backup story, not a whole lot happens. The Conquistador, who is this supervillain who dresses up like Cortez, he wants Beast to go and steal a nuclear reactor, and if he doesn't do it, he will kill Beast's parents. That's it. I really hate that these backup stories, they're not able to move forward very much with only 5 pages to work with, and then you have to have a little bit of an action scene in each 5 pages, so they're really not able to do a whole lot to move the story forward because they're also having to do all this action stuff. I wish that this wasn't a 4 or 5-parter like the Cyclops thing. I think the Cyclops origin storyline took 4 issues, 5 pages in each issue, so that was basically like an entire issue showing the origins of Cyclops. And if all of that was done together, if they just did one full 20-something page issue and said, we're going to stop doing stuff in the present day for an issue, and we're going to show you the origins of Cyclops for one issue, I'd be fine with that because it would feel like, okay, you're getting a story all in 1 month. But then when you're stretching one issue out to be 4 issues long and you're just doing it in little drips here and there, I don't like that as much. So I have no idea how long the origin of the Beast is going to go because Beast still has not met the X-Men. He still has not met Professor X. So it may be 2 or 3 more issues before he joins the X-Men. So not a whole lot happened there. That's about it for this issue. Next issue we will get a brand new villain in the present day for the X-Men to fight. So let's look forward to that. I'm not sure how long Arnold Drake's run lasts. This was the stuff that I was looking forward to. For several issues now, I remembered really enjoying Arnold Drake's run on this X-Men series, liking it a lot more than what Roy Thomas did, and even what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby did. Looking back, I don't hate what Stan Lee and Jack Kirby were doing on the book. It's definitely better than what Roy Thomas was doing on the book. They introduced a lot of what works with the X-Men, the idea of them hiding hiding in their mansion and having secret identities because the world might hate us and fear us, and they introduced a lot of characters that you see today in X-Men books. So in that regard, the X-Men stuff by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, it's not bad, but I still think that as far as just entertainment level, as far as being excited to read a story, I think I prefer this little storyline by Arnold Drake and Jim Steranko, and then later Don Heck and Werner Roth. But overall, I think this one was a little bit of a letdown. I was not feeling it as it came to a conclusion. But I don't know how much longer Arnold Drake is going to be on the book. I guess a fair warning, Roy Thomas does come back to the series, I think, after Arnold Drake leaves. And I seem to recall liking what he did in his second run a little bit more than his first run. But don't hold me to that, because I may get into his second run and may hate it just as much as his first run. But years ago when I was reading these Silver Age issues, I remember liking what he did the second time around a lot more than what he did the first time around. So we can look forward to that, but I think next issue might also be an Arnold Drake issue. I don't know. But anyway, that's it here. So let's consider this issue examined.